Church exists to worship God, and by the last APCM, we just started to worship again in our buildings. Because we weren't allowed to sing though, music was pre-recorded and we hummed silently behind our masks. Then came the transition to real singing from behind masks, and now the masks are off. Through all these changes, Michael Griffiths has been a rock in organising music each week and taking his turn at the keyboard or organ. The wonderful Nick Bosworth, Dominic Barlow and Fiona Sinfield have ensured we've never been without live music since it was possible to have it. With Rob Simpson and Amelia Cortez leaving Charlton this year, our serving team needed an injection of life. Along came Roberta Bassar, Jaden Mensah-Taylor and Jenny Lodge to fill the gap. Thank you, lovely people. The serving team has space to grow though, so speak to Roberta or to me if you'd like to join them. Earlier this year, we took delivery of brand new hymn books which were generously donated in memory of Valerie May by her dear friend Marion and have inclusive language, hooray! And by next APCM, we hope our new Director of Music will have been with us for almost a year. Interviews are later this month. And that we'll have a new choir of all ages, regular concerts and music to support non-traditional worship, all very exciting. We put together a mission action plan in the autumn of 2018 after a year of prayer and reflection, but a pandemic really isn't a good time for following through on projects drawn up before any of us had heard of the word coronavirus. The world wasn't working in the ways we'd been used to. There were endless restrictions to account for. People were struggling with loss and grief and with their mental health, and anyway, our perspective on everything was changing. Of course, God still asks his church to carry out his mission in the world, but how we do it and what our priorities were now felt a bit different. So, autumn 2020, we focused our mission around these words: discipleship, connection, justice, and environment. We discovered that, despite the challenges, we were doing a lot about all those things. Now we've moved on again, and crises other than COVID are grabbing our attention: the climate crisis, the war in Ukraine, fuel and food poverty. Just 3 examples from among many of how broken our world is and how much it needs the love of God. The church must have something to say about these issues, guided by the values we've learned from Jesus, and Christians must do something about them, because faith without deeds is dead. So it feels right now to draw up firmer projects again and decide what God wants our churches to be doing as we emerge from pandemic times. We made a start at the Benefice weekend at the end of last month, and we'll cascade that out to people who weren't there so everyone can contribute. Then it will be time to commit stuff to a plan, share and start work. National statistics from 2019 tell us that only 2% of young adults identify as Church of England, while 7 out of 10 under 24s say they have no religion. In 2021, the diocese gave us a £1,000 mission grant to carry out a listening exercise with children, young people, parents and carers. Our starting point was realising we're far from where we want to be, with providing for, engaging and discipling the young. All the results are in, and so are the plans for what happens now. So we'll be linking that into our mission action plan. Be ready to hear more young voices in our churches, both physically and in terms of influence. Who was it who said, "Unless you change and become like children, you will never enter the kingdom of heaven"? Southwark Pastoral Auxiliaries and Reverends, lay and ordained. Some of us have been given special responsibilities and authority, but the most important calling which we all share is to follow Jesus. A special thank you at this point, though, to those with authorised ministries. Roberta Bassar has a special focus on baptism. She's a lovely contact for families from the first meeting through preparation and on to the baptism service itself. Roberta keeps a special eye out for people who are unwell or struggling for other reasons, and she's recently started twice-weekly evening prayer at St. Richard's. Rob Simpson has always had a great way with people and an ability to meet them where they are. With his move to France, he's now resigned his commission as a spa, but I'm grateful for all he gave to the life of our church while he was here, and for the pastoral care he gave to so many. And thank you, clergy. Bennett Spong has been a priest here for 16 years. He combines deep thinking and theological reflection with a desire to walk with others on their journey of discipleship, and the Thursday evening book club attracts people from as far away as China. Bennett has also been quietly linking needy families up with food bank resources during the pandemic. He often says to me, "You're doing a good job." While I don't always agree, it always boosts me to hear the words that I know come from a place of support and encouragement. So thank you, Bennett. When anyone talks about Joe Lee, it's usually only a minute or so before they mention his sermons. Relatable, passionate, justice-focused, inspiring, funny, clear, accessible. These are the words that come up again and again. Joe is solid and reliable. But there are only 7 days in any week, and his demanding full-time work and caring responsibilities mean his ministry time is limited. I value every minute of it. Adelaide Davis started her curacy in Charlton in 2020. What a strange start for her. Not able to meet anyone in the flesh for months. Her first introduction to our churches being through a computer. Her ordination and priesting had been muted affairs because of COVID, so it was lovely that we could celebrate them more freely at St. Thomas's in September 2021. Adelaide is part-time and unpaid in the parishes, but in 2021, her call to prison chaplaincy led to her appointment as Anglican chaplain to HMP Isis in Thamesmead, a demanding but life-changing ministry for the young men who find themselves there. So, commissioned and ordained to all of you with your varied gifts and contributions, thank you from me and from the people you serve. Rick Newman stepped up to become church warden after Erica Wolf left, and he stayed on after I became rector, which was always going to have its advantages and disadvantages. 6 years later, he is now stepping down. Rick has been hard-working and responsible in the extreme, quietly getting on with things, filling gaps before anyone else even noticed them, and representing our parishes in all sorts of community settings. But having retired from paid work, and 2.5 years ago, it's right he has some space now to work out what sort of retirement he wants to lead. It's not ideal, though we did okay it with the Archdeacon, and not always easy for vicar and church warden to live together, but I want to say thank you to him for his endless support and love over the past 5 years. I'm so grateful as well that he'll continue to support our new church wardens with building matters in the year ahead. Joseph Spooner was acting church warden after the tragic death of John Chipperfield and elected at last APCM. He's an authority on our building and passionate about it. He's a lovely PCC lay chair, efficient, analytical, and isn't afraid to question and challenge. He's a really good person to talk things through with and is always very compassionate. Joseph's work life is busy, so I'm delighted that he's agreed to stand as church warden again this year. One of the church warden's main responsibilities is to care for and support the parish priest. I couldn't have been more blessed over the past year through these two men. When I asked Ali Edney if she'd consider doing some freelance admin hours for our church back in August 2020, I had no idea about two things. First, that she'd still be here a year and 9 months later, and second, that she'd throw herself into the role with such commitment, always go the extra mile, do well over and above what is asked of her, and all with grace and the kindness that is her hallmark. Ali, you are a lovely soul, and we're in your debt. Michael Griffiths voluntarily puts together the newsletter week after week. We still send hard copies to 24 people from the benefice, and the email version is sent to 143. It's our main channel of communication about what's happening. So if you've never opened your email version, give it a try. If you think we can improve, let Michael or I know. And Liz Buck has enabled us to host activities at St Richard's that have been screened for safety by guiding groups through the risk assessment process. And Liz has helped us ensure that we've been COVID safe through every stage of the pandemic. Thank you, Liz. In the last year, we've said goodbye to some wonderful people. Grace Itoji was a lovely, gentle lady with a big smile who travelled by bus from Woolwich to church. She'd been frail for some time before she died. Sue Burns was a long-term member of the church and a passionate supporter of women's ordination. She too had been frail over many years and suffered much. Sue had a lovely send-off from St Luke's. So may both these women rest in peace and rise in glory. And others have left Charlton to live elsewhere. Rob Simpson moved with his wife Helen to start a new chapter of life in France. And in September, Amelia Cortez moved to Blackburn Diocese to take part in a ministry experience scheme on an estates church in Blackpool. Both big personalities missed, but we pray that they will flourish wherever they are. Zoom and YouTube church. It started as a knee-jerk reaction. In a world where we were only allowed to leave our homes for one of 3 reasons, and going to church wasn't one of them, it was simply the only way to come together. Arik, Ali, Michael, Rosie, Ansai, Naomi, and Amabel. How God has blessed us with the right people for such a time as this. We've been able to provide an online church service every single Sunday since the 22nd of March 2020, and many services outside Sundays too. But church that started in order to meet a need for a particular time has opened our eyes to the possibility that online space could be a place where people can encounter God well into the future. Online church in Charlton also means Bible study, Thursday book club, and Sunday night compline, where faith is deepened and challenged. Massive thanks to Bennett for holding this and going digital. Online church also means WhatsApp. I've lost count of the number of benefice WhatsApp groups that have sprung up since March 2020. They've helped us through the hardest of times and given us a chance to get to know each other so much better. They're full of encouragement, challenge, fun, prayer, and kindness. Meanwhile, our very own Messy Church went online but is back meeting at St Richard's again. Thanks to Sonia for providing us with momentum and enthusing us. And to her team, May, Patricia, Ali and others who have helped make Messy Church such a fun way to be church every month. We hope that Sonia and May will return from this month's Messy Church conference inspired to help us grow Messy Church in Charlton. Statistics tell us that COVID has accelerated the direction of travel for church attendance. The average congregation in the church has reduced by 1/3, and we're bang on average in that respect. Where have those people gone? Some have stayed online, some have stopped coming, some have changed how often they come, some have died. All of this can be disheartening. It's great when church feels full. It was lovely to have around 100 people in church on Easter Sunday. We need to face the reality about church attendance, try to understand it, and then adapt to the situation we now find ourselves in. I want us to be an intelligent church, not one that wishes everything could go back 50 years, because that won't happen. Not one that panics and loses sight of why we're here in the first place, but one that trusts God and uses support available to us to plan what we can do. Expect to hear a lot more about that in the year ahead. And if any of that sounds like I haven't noticed lots of lovely new faces at St. Luke's, I have. Welcome. I hope your time here blesses you and that you might find ways of blessing this church community. When you feel ready, if you haven't already, say hello, share, and ask questions. In February, we held 2 Stewardship Sundays, where we asked everyone to consider their giving to church. People have responded generously. We've received £1,200 in one-off donations, a £260 monthly increase in direct giving, making a monthly total of £2,138. 4 people said they'd increase their regular plate giving as well. We had new offers of help with pastoral care, illustration, gardening, sewing, cleaning, work with children and group work. Thank you, everyone. George Burton is a long-term member of St. Luke's and has always been a man with the local community at heart. So I was really pleased to hear his view that, by George's own high standards, St. Luke's is doing well with its community involvement and outreach. What does that look like in practice? Well, at St. Richard's, we provide a place for 8 organisations to meet, serve and help people grow, a place for people to vote and for children to celebrate their birthdays. Through the wonderful Schools project, thank you Liz Buck and her team, we help 6 primary schools with their religious education curriculum and are developing ways to help with other parts of the curriculum too. We have representatives on the Charlton Society Committee, Safer Neighbourhood Panel, Charlton Together, and we've been movers and shakers and a home provider for the brand new Charlton Neighbourhood Forum. Thanks Rick Newman for all of that. Open days, trips up the tower, cinema evenings, collaborative projects with Charlton House, all of these have blossomed as restrictions have eased and Friends of St. Luke's has been ready to form partnerships locally. And our local community carol service, carols round the tree and ashes to go at Charlton Station have created touching points between our church and hundreds of local people. Deborah Jones and her green-fingered helpers have made the churchyard and memorial garden lovely places for a detour through the village. And B, our wonderful local greengrocer, sponsored our Christmas tree. And the works of the festival group has been all about enabling people who aren't churchgoers to engage with the themes that Easter and Christmas throw up. Kinga's brilliant installations. Last year, the crucified Christ, this year, the risen Christ. The wonderful digital Advent calendar and the moving Holy Week calendar. God's given us this place to love. I wonder what new ways we may find to love it in the next year. So where will we be this time next year? From where I'm sitting, there are some important goals for the year ahead. Creating worship that enables us to meet and be touched by God. Agreeing a new mission action plan that is owned widely by the congregation. Becoming a church where the voice of the young is heard and respected and where the young are enabled to lead church life. Employing a director of music who understands the power of music to deepen faith and build community and who gathers together a choir of all ages. Supporting each other to be disciples of Jesus and grow in confidence to share God's love. Becoming a church that uses all forms of communication well and is active on social media. good forward planning, setting aside time for important things so that urgent things don't always control us. Having a good handle on our finances so we can make the best decisions about our money and how we spend it. Facing with honesty the reality of widespread decline in church going and deciding what we need to do about it here. Embracing and celebrating diversity in all its forms and learning to love and value one another despite difference. This is my perspective. Other lovely, committed people round here will have things to add, things to change. So, I look forward to us doing that together. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to everyone who has put their hand up today to serve God through positions of responsibility. And to all in our church community, and to those yet to join, I look forward to us working, praying, worshipping, laughing and crying together in the year ahead, because God has called us by name and we are His.